All right, Admin Mastermind, welcome back. And Teach Better Family, it's so great to see you. We just had, man, a phenomenal session once again this week as we had, Chad, one real problem that was occurring on the campus. They kind of laid it out for us, and then we just went with it for 45 minutes straight, which was brilliant. Loved hearing from each member this morning, both in the chat and then also with their voice and just kind of the things that they've been trying to work through. And it seems like we're all in the same space, right? We're all trying new things, trying to figure out how to do this job as leadership is so difficult. For those who are maybe joining us for the first time on YouTube or on a podcast, we meet every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, and it is free. It is free to come and collaborate with other administrators all over the country at teachbetter.com/mastermind. But Chad, I just want to kind of lay it up to you as far as the scenario that was presented to us, and we'll kind of bounce it back and forth and play a little tennis.
That sounds good to me, man. Yeah.
All right. So one of our admin had seen in a walkthrough that a teacher had kind of a chart-based student behavior system. The way that it was set up was popsicle sticks and a chart, and if there was a student behavior that they didn't like, the popsicle stick moved up. And then, of course, at the very top is the detention as a consequence. What was seen, and some parents heard about this system also and provided their feedback, was that they didn't like that the student had to get up and move it. It was in front of the entire class. It was essentially calling the kid out in front of everybody. It was essentially a public shaming. And that's been communicated both by admin and by parents to the teacher. And unfortunately, the teacher continues to do it. It's a veteran teacher, and they feel very strongly about it. So the administrator was just asking, like, what are some alternatives to this system?
Yeah.
And what can we do to kind of help the teacher just with student behavior in general? And it really opened up the box to a whole host of things as far as proactive activities to let's think about some different systems than the one that's currently used to really like even looking at the lesson. So I don't know where you want to go, Chad, with this, but what are some first thoughts?
Well, I mean, definitely my first thought is I love the fact that the leader was solution oriented first before bringing it to the educator, because we have to be cognizant as instructional coaches, educational leaders, instructional leaders, or district leaders. If we are going to take something away from a teacher or suggest taking something away, we are then creating a vacuum for that teacher that is going to be a very real day-to-day problem. Because right now, even if it's not the ideal solution, whatever this popsicle stick method is a system that they have established in their classroom. So if we tear all that away without providing an additional solution, we are now going to create more headache for the teacher, more frustration, which means they're going to be way less receptive of the feedback. So first and foremost, I think there's a general, from a coaching perspective, best practice appearing here, where if we are going to suggest a change, we should have some collaborative solution at least started so that we can build on that, as opposed to completely ripping that current solution or that practice away and then leaving nothing, because now you're going to just make the situation worse. You're not going to build that trust. So like, first and foremost, from a coaching perspective, I like how this was brought. I like that it was solution focused. Now I think there's like the other part of the conversation, which is like public shaming, punitive measures, fear-based classroom management, non-restorative practices, and student relationships, right? So when I'm working with teachers, I think a question we can both tackle right now is, one of the big questions I ask is, are the actions you're taking improving relationships with students, or are they making them more divisive, right? And anytime you're putting yourself against students or making yourself the quote unquote villain in a scenario as the educator in the room, you're going to make those relationships a little bit worse every single day. And if we're public shaming and increasing fear and increasing stress, overall, those relationships are going to get more strained. The respect for the teacher is going to slowly diminish and deteriorate. So now the misbehavior is going to increase because students don't know how to deal with all those emotions due to the lack of frontal lobe development in the first place, right? But like they just don't know how to regulate all that. Like, so now it's we've made it you versus us. And there's no corrective reparation of the relationship. At least in this scenario, it doesn't sound like there is. And we have a scenario where the teacher's kind of doubling down potentially on the practices that, to be fair, Josh, both of us know that color charts, clip charts, whatever you want to call it, popsicle sticks are patently not research based and horrible classroom management tools. And then even like punitive measures like detention, which is also attached in this scenario, are not restorative in nature and don't improve student behavior over time. So to me, this is a conversation about immediate band-aid fixes versus long-term strategies that improve classroom management. So I'd love your thoughts and more of like the science behind this, because I know this is your wheelhouse on like, let's talk about the behavior modification for a second, because I also think there's an instructional conversation that we had, but I don't think we're there yet. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, from a behavioral standpoint, what are the negative cognitive and neurological, psychological effects of something like this? How are they hurting that relationship? And what would be better practices that a teacher could use?
Yeah, and I'll go just based on what was discussed even from other administrators today too, because I thought there was some like great suggestions this morning, just in regards to like the proactive piece, like the consistency in communication. It seemed like there was some disconnect as far as expectations as far as the lesson versus behavior. It was kind of a more laid back version of teaching, but then when it came to student behavior, it got very, very strict, very, very fast, and there was just not
Yeah.
consistency with the students, and the students were kind of thrown off by that. There was the proactive piece as far as like the recognizing positive behaviors prior to the behaviors actually occurring. I thought the best piece was actually saying, hey, you already have a system in place, let's not lose it, let's flip it on its head. So when kids are doing positive things, that's when they move the popsicle stick, right? So we're actually recognizing the things that they're doing well and reward
The
them in that.
positive versus negative
Right.
reinforcement
And
of
so,
behavior. Yeah.
right. So the top is no longer a detention, a negative punishment. It's now something maybe that they're working toward as they're doing positive behavior, right? So, yeah, like you said, this is a middle school student, and their brains are not constructed there, right? And if you are pushing fear, especially our kids with our trauma, like they're going to shut down. Their brain is
And you're
literally
going to
going to be
trigger
in
that trauma
survival. Yes,
response
you're
all the
totally going
time.
to trigger it.
Yeah.
And then, I brought this up during the session. It was just like, what if we did that with our staff? How would our adults feel with a similar situation and a similar system? They would absolutely hate it, and we would hear from it from all the way to the top, right?
And the union and everything else.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. The higher ups in the district would squash that immediately, because of course that's just a terrible system. So why would we use that for our kids but not for our adults, right? Why would we have a system that we know no one would enjoy and would absolutely hate? So yeah, we had some ton of great conversations in regards to that. Also, like ownership with our students. Did they have ownership in the rules? Or we talked about treatment agreements, right? How we're going to treat each other. Did they have any say in that? Someone brought up something similar, but like the behavior contracts and things like that. I like to focus more on the relationship piece of it, so that's why
Right.
I tend to go toward that. Student to student, student to teacher, teacher to student, and really talking about the relationship and how we're going to treat each other versus don't do this, don't do that, right? It's that
Yeah.
positive language.
I also feel like if you need to go negative, which avoid at all cost if you can, but there are times when you have to correct action. I also feel like collective efficacy can be a strategy to reduce individual relationship strain, right? So saying, if anyone in the class is not meeting the expectation, the class is losing a point or getting a point or something like that, can also be a really good strategy, because now you're not calling anyone else out, but now when something positive happens, you can go, Jimmy, Susie, Bobby, Jamal, like whoever, like got us a point. Let's all thank whoever. So now you're positively reinforcing the things you want to see, but collectively going, our entire class has a high expectation, and when anyone doesn't meet that expectation, we all fail to meet that expectation. So like that collective efficacy can also do in my opinion, I had a lot of strategies in my own classroom that were collective efficacy based, because now you're taking now I'm not saying you don't have the individual conversations privately, because that's still important. However, here's the truth: when a kid messes up for the whole class, they know it. Like they all know who's like who's making that mistake, and the kid knows that they're making that mistake. Like it's almost like in sports, right? Like we have to start with the premise that every kid wants to do their best every moment of every day, right? Like if we start with that premise, if we believe that internally, like in our hearts, right? We can operate on that premise and go, if they have a misstep, it's not on purpose, it's not with malice, it's because something else went wrong, or I didn't execute as an adult, or the environment triggered something that we didn't mean to trigger. And now we can actually problem solve too. So I also think this is just another example of like compliance and control versus building capacity to meet expectations, right? Like I think that's a huge difference in how you would view like this management system versus another management system that was more built on positive classroom culture and relationships.
Chad, just to end our conversation today, you had mentioned the instructional piece, and I think we did eventually transition to that in the conversation, which was like, hey, when you're in there doing your walkthrough or doing your observation, were there times within the lesson that opened up the opportunity for students to misbehave? So we
Yeah.
just kind of talked through that component.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever I'm focused on management as a whole, I think about the flow of the class. The first thing I always look for, and if you're a teacher or an admin, you can steal this, you can take it, you can take some notes and write some stars. First 5 minutes can save a lesson, right? So I'm going to make sure, if I'm looking at classroom management, I want to know what the first 5 minutes of any classroom looks like. That means, what is the transition from the hall, especially in middle school, because of like the social interaction and importance there? What is the transition from their social world to their academic world look like? Because that's what we're dealing with in middle school, right? Like, and so does the teacher successfully transition them from hallway to classroom into a focused mindset? What are those first tasks? What do those expectations look like? Do the students know what's expected? Are those expectations shared? Is there a routine that the teacher follows in the first 5 minutes? Does it feel like the students know what that routine's supposed to be? Or does it feel like it's the first time the teacher's ever tried this because someone's in their room today, right? Like, what a well-oiled first 5 minutes looks like as an administrator or as a teacher, or what it feels like as an educator. So the first thing is the first 5 minutes. The second thing I look for is big transitions, or any transition, because those are going to be the most opportune time for misbehaviors or dysregulation cognitively to happen in students' minds. Because what you don't want to do is, if you switch too quickly without a heads up, without clear expectations, you're going to automatically flip on every fight or flight and trauma response in your classroom at the exact same time. Wait, what's going on? What do I need? I don't have my book, but I need my book. I don't have a pencil, but I need like, oh my gosh. And now for us as adults, we go, why are you freaking out? But for that kid, their brain thinks they're being chased by a bear, because now they have a trauma response for 50 other things that are going on that can cause a ton of issues. So by having clear expectations, clear transitions, those are all really good spots to like focus your energy. For example, if I'm transitioning to a new activity, have I verbally stated that that transition is coming and given the students a heads up so it's not a surprise? Have I transitioned my expectations and put them somewhere where the students can clearly see what is expected? Because I hate the phrase, I told them I don't understand why they don't remember, because most kids are not paying attention 100% of the time. So make sure you've said it, you've posted it, it's on their work, like whatever you're doing, like that there's clear expectations. And then, is there a productive closing of the class, right? Is the last 10 minutes, 5 minutes complete chaos, right? Or is it just Is it very clean, and are you closing out the class in a productive way? So like when I talk about management with teachers, I'm always looking from an instructional standpoint of what's the flow of the class and is that being managed and facilitated properly? Because as teachers, if we just go, all right, now we're doing this, and then you do this, like you're not making sure everyone's on the same page, which now is going to create cognitive dissonance, confusion, stress, which then is going to activate all those behavior problems that we want. Because as soon as kids disengage from learning, they engage in other things, right? Like, which are things we usually don't want them to. And then the last piece of all of this is I look at general engagement. I cannot expect if I'm telling all my kids to read page 55 and answer the questions at the back of the book every day, that they're going to be super engaged by that on a daily basis. I'm not saying you can't do that, but make sure, like, are there multiple modalities going on? Is there participation? Is there active learning? That's like the third tier of management that I usually look at. First 5 minutes, transitions and facilitation of those transitions and expectations, and then how active is the classroom so that students can actually engage in the learning that's going on. If all those three things are in place, management's usually not going to be much of an issue, right?
No, I love it. All right, y'all. So just a reminder, every Tuesday morning, we meet at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Hopefully, if you are watching for the first time, you can jump on and join us. Like I said, it is just a rich conversation, one that I really love, Chad, that it's really looking at a problem and trying to solve it as a whole,
It's what
right?
it's
We're
for.
all there. Yeah.
Yeah. We're all going to powwow around whatever's going on and help you find a solution.
Yeah, teachbetter.com/masterminds to sign up. When you do sign up, you'll get the link also to our Facebook group because we definitely want to support you throughout the week. It's not just for Tuesday mornings. We're here for you at all the time. If this is something that maybe you're dealing with on your campus or within your district and you need support, Chad, myself, and the Teach Better team is here for you. So please reach out. We do this work with schools all the time. Love it, and are very, very passionate about this topic. So please let us know how we can support you. With that, Chad, thank you so much for joining once again for this week's recap.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot.